Cafe show on Immaculate Television, ITVS, wherever you're watching us from. It's a Breakfast Cafe show, and it's September the 29th, 2025, a new day in a new week, of course. Another opportunity to make things right, opportunity to achieve your dreams and aspiration. And you know how we do it on the Breakfast Cafe show. And in case you don't know, if this is the first time you're joining us on the program, the Breakfast Cafe show is the show where we'll bring you the headlines making the rounds on our national dailies, keeping you informed about things that are happening, and then we bring you analysts that will dissect and discuss deeply into some of those stories. And after that, we'll bring sports and entertainment to your decks, all to make it balanced for your listening and viewing pleasure. I am Grace Ogala here, and I'm not doing this show alone. I have my wonderful colleague here, Okpeyemi Balogun. Good morning, Okpeyemi.
Good morning, Grace. You look good this morning.
And you too. I hope you enjoyed your weekend.
Of course I did.
All right, guys, let's go into the business of the day. We have so many papers this morning, so many Nigerian dailies, newspapers this morning. We have the Daily Monitor, Voice of Liberty, Guardian, Punch, Matrix, Vanguard these days. So many of them, of course. The stories on those papers are very essential, very important. There's no story that is less important. You have to be aware of everything this morning. All right, let's start this morning with the Nation newspaper, the paper that tells us about our nation. The Nation newspaper, the big story on the front page of the Nation newspaper this morning: federal government intervenes in Dangote Pengassan row. Federal government intervenes in Dangote Pengassan row. With the rider, oil workers union strike call condemns, says Dangote refinery. You can find more detail of that story on page 7 of the Nation newspaper. And also we have this one: no discussion yet on zoning in ADC. No discussion yet in zoning on zoning in ADC, says spokesman on page 4 of the Nation newspaper. And 24 states to benefit from AFDB's backing on agric expansion. Page 4 also of that paper has that story. And also, no religious genocide in Nigeria, says Idris. No religious genocide in Nigeria, says Idris. The writer of that story says Omokri faults U.S. talk show host on alleged killings of Nigerians. Omokri faults U.S. talk show host on alleged killings of Nigerians. And that's on page 9 of the Nation newspaper this morning. And PSC mourns as former chairman Perry Osayede dies at 88. Page 6 of the Nation newspaper has more detail of that story. And over to you, Tolu.
Okay. Next on our list is the paper. World Bank to approve $750 million US loan to Nigeria on Tuesday. World Bank to approve $750 million US loan to Nigeria on Tuesday. And you can find that on page 2 of the First Daily newspaper. Labor war erupts. Dangote sacks spark nationwide strike threat. Labor war erupts. Dangote spark nationwide strike threat. You can find that on page 5 of the First Daily newspaper. Bandit kills 50 vigilantes. Hunters in Kwara community attack. Bandit kills 50 vigilantes. Hunters in Kwara community attack. China opens world's tallest bridge in Gizo. China opened world's tallest bridge in Gizo. Shadow government courts to rule on DSS suit against Pat Utomi on Monday. Court suit against Pat Utomi on Monday. The Serap to Tinubu reveals process of appointing next INEC chairman. Serap to Tinubu reveals process of appointing next INEC chairman. Police inspector dies after accidental discharge in Kano. Police inspector dies after accidental discharge in Kano. And the last story here is Arsenal stunt Newcastle 2-1 with late comeback victory. Over to you, Grace.
All right, the next paper is the Nigerian Tribune newspaper. The big story: the federal government has paid Osun State local government allocations into APC's member accounts. NULGE reveals federal government has paid Osun State's local government allocations into APC members' accounts. NULG reveals. The writers to that story describes action as scary and unprecedented. APC slams NULGE, says allocation were paid into local government. Obala Doja unfolds economic plans for Ibadan land. It has so many riders there. You can find that on page 16 of the Nigerian Tribune newspaper.
Moving on to the Daily Times newspaper. FG urges Pengassan to shelve strike, dissolve feud with Dangote. FG urges Pengassan to shelve strike, dissolve feud with Dangote. And we can find that on page 2 of the Daily Times newspaper. Allegation of genocide against Christian first. Allegation of genocide against Christian force. We can find that on page 6 of the Daily Times newspaper. ADC to Tinubu seeking UN Security Council seats baseless without securing. ADC to Tinubu seeking UN Security Council seats baseless without rescoring. That can be found on page 2 of the Daily Times newspaper. Withdraw appointment of APC's member to REC, Serap tells Tinubu. Withdraw appointment of ADC members as REC, Serap tells Tinubu. We can find that on page 6 of the Daily Times newspaper. Rabies Day, 70% of dogs in Nigeria requires vaccination to contain rabies. We can find that on page 5 of the Daily Times newspaper. CBN boosts Naira with $7 million FX sales as reserve. CBN boosts Naira with $7 million FX sales as reserve. We can find that on page 13 of the Daily Times newspaper. And lastly, on the Daily Times newspaper, SEC raises alarm over AI-generated investment scam. SEC raises investment scam. We can find that on page 7 of the Daily Times newspaper.
All right, let's look at the Nigerian Direct newspaper. Mixed reactions as federal government releases withheld allocations to Osun APC local government chairman. And that's on page 7. And nationwide blackout looms as gas suppliers shut Tamil plant. Nationwide blackout looms as gas suppliers shut Tamil plant. That's on page 7 of the Nigerian News Direct newspaper. Now let's look at the Matrix newspaper. The big story on the front page of the Matrix says recapitalization. Clock ticks as banks scramble to meet CBN's deadline. Clock ticks as banks scramble to meet CBN's deadline. That's on page 2 of the Matrix. And federal government refutes false claims of religious genocide in Nigeria, page 8 of the Matrix. And fraudsters using AI-generated celebrity endorsement to deceive investors. That's coming from SEC. Fraudsters using AI-generated celebrity endorsement investors. Page 12 has that story. And also Russia launches 12-hour onslaught on Ukraine. Civilian casualties mount. Page 28 of the Matrix has that story. And lastly, Zamfara mining collapse. Alake warns federal government satellite surveillance move. Zamfara mining collapse. Alake warns federal government satellite surveillance move. The writer of that story debunks deaths of 100 miners. Yes, you can find more detail of that story, page 3 of the Matrix newspaper.
Moving on to the Leadership newspaper, Nigeria's most influential newspaper. The first story here says, no genocide against Nigerian Christians, says ministers. No genocide against Nigerian Christians, says ministers. We can find that on page 7 of the Leadership newspaper. Jonathan will contest 2027 election on PDP platform, Professor Jerry Garner claims. We can find that on page 2 of the Leadership newspaper. Government step in to resolve oil, Union Dangote refinery rule. Government step in to resolve oil, Union Dangote Refinery Road. We have two riders to that story, and you can find more details by going to page 4 of the Leadership newspaper. SEC raises the alarm over AI-generated investment scam. SEC raises the alarm over AI-generated investment scam. We can find that on page 29 of the Leadership newspaper. Union accuses FG of illegality over release of Oshu Council funds. We can find that on page 25 of the Leadership newspaper. UNGA80 AFDB backs Nigeria on expansion of agric zone to 24 states. UNGA 80 AFDB backs Nigeria on expansion of agric zone to 24 states. We can find that on page 18 of the Leadership newspaper. Nigerian challenge did not start with Tinubu government. This was said by Akume on page 23 on Leadership newspaper. And lastly, on Leadership newspaper, village head 11 vigilantes killed by gunmen in Kwara State. You can find more details of that story on page 8 of the Leadership newspaper.
All right, I have the Guardian newspaper next. Nigeria risks 14.7 billion naira daily loss. Fuel crisis as Dangote Pengassan rift deepens. Page 5 of the Guardian. And punishing suicide attempts undermines mental health reform. Punishing suicide attempts undermines mental health reform. Page 8. You can continue that story on page 8. And SEC warns of AI investment scams targeting Nigerians. SEC warns of AI investment scams targeting Nigerians. That's on page 4 of the Guardian. And also, World Health Day, cardiovascular disease burden worsen amid shortage of specialists. Cardiovascular disease burden worsens amid shortage of specialists. If you've seen the Guardian newspaper, you'll see a chart there talking about the World Health Day and so many things you want to know. You can find more detail of that on page 5 of the Guardian. And resident doctors issue federal government a 30-day ultimatum over unmet demands. Resident doctors issue federal government 30-day ultimatum over unmet demands. Page 9 of the Guardian. Bandits kill 10, kidnap several in Kwara State. Bandits kill 10, kidnap several in Kwara. Federal government dismisses religious terrorism allegation. Federal government dismisses religious terrorism allegation. Page 45 of the Guardian has that story. And the last paper I have with me this morning, the Voice of Liberty newspaper, which is the voice of all. The Voice of Liberty, the big story there, Dangote Refinery blackout imminent as Pengassan declares nationwide strike. So you can see that this story has been repeating across almost all the dailies. So the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, Pengassan, has directed its members nationwide to withdraw their services following the alleged mass dismissal of some Nigerian workers by Dangote Refinery. And this is still ongoing. Definitely, you want us to keep you updated about the stories coming up. And also we have the story, Abuja Kaduna train service to resume next week, coming from NRC. Kano government move allocation in 6 months than I received in 8 years. That's coming from Ganduje. Kano government got more allocation in 6 months than I received in 8 years. That's a claim made by Ganduje. You can get that small story of that from the Voice of Liberty. And Nigerians must know your candidates for INEC chairman. Nigerians must know your candidates for INEC chairman. That's coming from Syrup to President Tinubu. Tinubu over UN Security Council agenda. ADC knocks Tinubu over UN Security Council agenda. And alleged money laundering. Nigerians abroad petition U.S. Attorney General demands Wike's extradition. Alleged money laundering. Nigerians abroad petition U.S. Attorney General demands Wike's extradition. That's talking about the Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike. So Nigerians abroad are already petitioning the United States Attorney General over an alleged money laundering case, which has been going on for some weeks now. And also, insecurity, remove Kwara, Kogi West from northern classification, reclassify them as Yoruba terrorists. Remove Kwara, Kogi West from northern classification, reclassify them as Yoruba terrorists. That's coming from Yoruba Union.
Disclose appointment process of INEC chairman. Sarah urges Tinubu to disclose appointment process of INEC chairman. You can find that on page 6 of the Daily Monitor newspaper. Limit forecast 3 days rain, thunderstorm nationwide. Limit forecast 3 days rain, thunderstorm nationwide. We can find that on page 4 of the Daily Monitor newspaper. Osun local government crisis nudge direct workers to continue staying away from work. Osun local government crisis nudge direct workers to continue staying away from work. We can also find that on page 4 of the Daily Monitor newspaper. NDLEA arrests 2 drug kingpins with consignment of cocaine and others. NDLEA arrests 2 drug kingpins with consignment of cocaine and others. You can also find that on page 5 of the Daily Monitor newspaper. Lastly, on the Daily Monitor newspaper, FG denies claim of religious genocide in Nigeria, says it is false. FG denies claim of religion genocide in Nigeria, says it is false.
All right, thank you very much for staying with us up till this time. And that's all we can take on the front pages of our national dailies this morning. We'll be going on a short break, and when we come back, it'll be time for analysis with our guests already seated. Don't go anywhere, stay with us. Welcome back from that short break. Like I said, we just had the newspaper review segment. It's now time to discuss and dissect deeply into some of these stories we just read to you. And I will not be doing this alone. I have our public affairs analyst, our in-house public affairs analyst to do this with me this morning, person of Mr. Comrade Sheung Oyelewo. Good morning, Mr. Sheung.
A very good morning to you.
Good morning. Welcome to the program this morning.
Brilliant
it's
job.
Nice having you to join us.
Before
we even go into it, how was your weekend?
Well, pleasant, eventful. We had the coronation of the 44th Olubadan of Ibadan land. And it was a beehive of activities. It was very glamorous. History was made, and we congratulate the 44th Olubadan. His Imperial Majesty, Kabiyesi, Senator Dr. Rashid Adewolu Ladoja, the Olubadan of Ibadan land.
Of course, that's to say the weekend was was wonderful.
Yes, it was.
Wonderful, especially in this part of the nation, Ibadan land. It was.
The president of the country.
Yeah, he was around.
There. Governors were there. Dignitaries were there. Colorful display of tradition and our
there was
culture.
no record, no case of violence or.
Not at all.
Yeah,
not at all.
Yeah, it was a peaceful.
Ibadan, generally peaceful people, hospitable people, but they hold dear to their heart that institution, especially that throne of the Olubadan of Ibadan. And the person, the character now, the personality that has eventually become the 44th Olubadan appears to be the man of the people. He was celebrated and he is still being celebrated across the nooks and crannies of Ibadan, or your state, and even beyond.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Shein, for that wonderful one. Now let's go into the business of the day. If you can recall, when I was taking the newspaper review segment, almost all the papers were just reading and sounding Pengassan, Dangote. Now let's talk about this story. From the Voice of Liberty, said Dangote refinery blackout imminent as Pengassan declares nationwide strike. And they are declaring a strike here. On the Daily Monitor, it reads, Pengassan orders nationwide strike over sack of workers. So the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Pengassan has directed its members nationwide to withdraw their services following the sack of over 800 Nigerian workers at the Dangote refinery. This was made known by the General Secretary of Pengassan, where he announced it in Abuja in a statement. Now, he said the directive was issued after an emergency meeting at the union's NEC held on Saturday in Abuja. He described the refinery's action as a violation of Nigeria's labor laws, the constitution, and international conventions. According to him, the refinery has replaced Nigerians with over 2,000 foreign workers, subjecting our people to the worst type of working condition in the oil and gas industry.
Well, it's so unfortunate that we are at this level, and that this issue that ought to have been amicably settled has now metamorphosed into a bigger crisis, and we now have industrial action from this association. Pengassan, the field between Pengassan and Dangote refinery has reached a very disturbing crescendo that it has led to industrial disharmony. Well, it's not far-fetched because of the interests that we have. But let's look at it holistically. As a worker and an employer of labor, let's look at the responsibilities of these two entities. Dangote refinery, yes, is in for business. The largest refinery in terms of capacity of production, not only in Africa. And the expectation is that we've had, or Dangote refinery, or Dangote as a businessman, has invested hugely in that project, and he wants to make his own profit. It's very important. He doesn't want any halt or any activity that could stall his expected production, his expected productivity.
That's how you see it.
Yes, and that's the way any sane business person will think. You don't want restrictions, you don't want bottlenecks, you don't want people to strangulate you through associations, through some certain obnoxious rules or regulations. And sometimes you want to enjoy your monopoly because you have a target, you have the market. Aside the Nigerian market, Dangote refinery is targeting the African sub-region and the African continent and prospective buyers of that refined products globally, because Nigeria oil appears to be one of the best in terms of quality. So the demand globally is there, and Dangote has an advantage of producing, refining for Nigeria and beyond. Now, the issue started even with the Nigerian government when Dangote refinery was demanding, okay, out of the 2 million barrels or close to that we have as a nation that we produce daily, Dangote want a significant portion of that crude so that it could use it to power its own production, the refinery, which has a capacity of over 400,000 barrels per day. And you know, we are indebted to our partners. Nigerian government will have to sell part of this crude to the international community and get some revenue. That's one. Those who we've partnered with, that are the ones even helping with the exploration of this oil, we have to take certain quota of it. Left with what? Maybe left with less than 800 barrels or lower than that. And Dangote as an entity intends to have the bulk of the remaining ones. And that caused crisis between the government and Dangote refinery. That look, we cannot give you this lump sum. We cannot give you this quantity. We also have the market. And we have our own interest and expected income too that we will derive as a government from this. We cannot give. So you can go source elsewhere. For your crude oil, you have the opportunity to go anywhere. And that's why the issue of, Dangote refinery, despite the fact that Nigeria has abundance of crude oil in our country, is still importing crude from the United States, from other countries. That is the reason why we have that. You see interest now. Now, for the workers, I told you that Dangote's interest is, look, I want to have a seamless operation. I mean, for business, Nigerians demand this crude. Other users, aside the ones in Nigeria, are making you demand for it. Nothing should stall my production. Now, this is it. Common sense and strategy. If you have Pengasyn, you have other associations, and they are with good strength in terms of membership, and they form the largest chunk of your employees, or they could stall your production, they could stall the delivery of this product to the end users. And they could come with different demands. Because when it comes to association and unionism, demands is like they are Oliver Twist. We are not saying their demands are not justified, but it's unending. Just as human want is satisfied. So that is the way it is. They come with demands. Dangote refinery may not wish to accommodate those demands. And the best thing to their mind to do is, look, let's break their ranks. Let's make it so open. Look at what the federal government did. They tried to infiltrate ASU, they formed Konya, they formed another one, just to break their influence, just to break their strength. And that is what Dangote refinery, to my mind, is also attempting to do. Joining Pengasyn, joining other associations is voluntary. And if you want to work in my own organization, if I have to employ you afresh, you have to sign undertaking that you will not belong to any association. Although that is against the law. But business owners have been doing that. They just being frivolous, undertaking, they just try to gag people. And because you are desperate to get that job, you append your signature to everything or anything that comes your way. In fact, they will tell you sometimes that you don't report this organization to outsider. Irrespective of the pains of what you are going through, it must be settled within, or you don't even join any association, so you don't have a voice. So that the company dictates to you. And when you are not satisfied with the setup, no other organ can fight for you. The only thing you do is to just leave the job and go elsewhere. So it's a strategy by owners of business to keep people in perpetual check and control. And that can translate into bondage, which is against the law, because the law says you have freedom of association. And to the best of my knowledge, when you have employees up to 20 or above 40, within themselves, they can form a union. They just go get affiliated to either NLC or TUC. They have the right to form a union. But all these big companies, conglomerates, they believe that, look, it's not healthy for their own organization to have structures like that, to have association, to have this, to have that. So indirectly, they try to intimidate some who are in those associations, either to withdraw from those associations or they get sacked. And it's very, very unfortunate. But you see, we could try to manage the situation
So I would really like you to tell us how this, how it can be managed, because I also saw some places on the papers where they are saying federal government is urging Pengassan to shelve strike and resolve the crisis with Dangote.
Yes, they could tell the federal government could appeal because of the implication of that. If they go on strike, Pengassan, it means that the distribution of petroleum products to the end users, to the majority of Nigerians, will be altered. And you know the implication.